In the coming chapters, we're going to look at a lot of these attributes and how they influence copies that are placed onto geometry. I wanted to include this here. This is a reference from the Houdini help documentation. And this shows you all of the attributes that are available for influencing the copies that are placed onto objects or onto points. And it's worth noting that you have many different ways of influencing the rotations and directions that copies are placed, as well as their scale and position and orientation. And you can even override the material path and the material settings for copies. So a lot of really interesting options. We're not going to go through every one of these, but we will go through the key features. Now this slide again is from the Houdini documentation, and I'm including it here just as reference. So this is something to keep handy as we go through this in case any of it becomes confusing. But I did want to point out that there are certain priorities that exist when you place copies onto objects in terms of how transformations work and how rotations work. So you can see if we look at the orient attribute here, that it is used to orient the copy in the instance. However, if that attribute doesn't exist, then it has a fallback, which is to use normals and up vectors. And then if you have velocity on there and normals aren't on there, then it's going to use velocity to orient the objects. And then you have this additional layer of rotations that can be placed on the objects with a rot or rotation attribute. So you can see that there's a bunch of different layers and ways that we can influence the objects. And we'll take a look at a couple of these in the lessons ahead.